I'm a 42-year-old construction manager, and I've been married to my wife, Rachel, for 4 years now. Rachel's family is what everyone in town thinks of as the perfect family. Her parents have been married for 45 years and are still super affectionate. They even hold hands when they walk together. Rachel has 2 brothers, and they're total opposites. The older brother, Marcus, is 44. He's a high school football coach and has been married to his wife, Olivia, for 12 years. They have 3 daughters, ages 10, 8, and 6. Marcus is the kind of guy who's all about family. He coaches his kids' soccer teams, takes them camping in the summer, and even volunteers at school events to make sure his family is well taken care of. Then there's Ethan, the younger brother. He's 35 and works as a freelance photographer. His job takes him all over the world, shooting wildlife and landscapes for nature magazines. He's always been the adventurous one in the family. Long hair, stories about sleeping under the stars in the middle of nowhere. He's recently engaged to Lucia, a botanist he met while working on a project in Costa Rica. When Rachel and I first started dating 6 years ago, I noticed something a little strange about her family. On our 3rd date, I took her to a local brewery. While we were trying different beers, I noticed a guy in sunglasses and a baseball cap sitting in the corner, staring at us. I pointed him out to Rachel, thinking maybe we should leave if he was following us. She squinted, then started laughing. She waved at the guy, and he quickly hid behind a menu. Rachel told me not to worry, and we went on with our date. But I couldn't stop thinking about that mysterious guy. It wasn't until months later, when I finally met Rachel's brother Marcus, that I realized he was the stalker from the brewery. Turns out, Rachel and her brothers had this habit of secretly checking out each other's dates without introducing themselves. That was my first real look at how unusually close the 3 siblings were. Rachel, Marcus, and Ethan shared everything. Daily phone calls, non-stop group texts, and weekly family dinners that were treated like sacred events. They knew each other's bank passwords, medical histories, and relationship drama before their own partners did. It was like they were in each other's lives 24/7. First, I thought it was kind of sweet, coming from a broken family. My parents split when I was 7, and I barely talked to my step-siblings. I admired how tight they were. But as Rachel and I got more serious, their closeness started to feel overwhelming. Rachel would tell her brothers about our arguments before we'd even resolved them. When I got diagnosed with a minor health issue, Marcus called me with advice before I'd even told my own dad. I tried talking to Rachel about how uncomfortable it made me, but she brushed it off, saying I just didn't get it because I didn't have siblings who cared about each other like she did. And honestly, she wasn't entirely wrong. My own brother didn't even respond to our wedding invitation. So, I let it go, figuring this was just part of being with Rachel. Then came the wedding planning. Surprisingly, Rachel and I were totally in sync. We agreed on everything. A medium-sized ceremony at a local vineyard, a reasonable budget, even the same style of decorations. It was smooth sailing, and I felt like we were a great team. I thought I'd found someone who really understood what partnership meant. But on the wedding day, things took a weird turn. Marcus showed up in a tuxedo that was exactly like mine. Not just similar, identical. Same designer, same cut, even the same boutonniere. When I first saw him, I thought it was some kind of joke. But Rachel was thrilled. During her vows, she added a special part thanking Marcus for being the example of the kind of husband she wanted. She even said it was fitting that the 2 most important men in her life looked like twins on her big day. I stood there, stunned, listening to my bride talk about another man during our wedding vows. The guests were clearly uncomfortable, shifting in their seats. Marcus's wife, Olivia, had this frozen smile on her face. My parents exchanged looks, and even Rachel's parents seemed embarrassed. It was awkward, to say the least. At the wedding reception, I took Rachel aside and asked her why she hadn't mentioned the matching tuxedos to me. She seemed genuinely surprised by my question. To her, it was a sweet surprise that I should have been happy about. When I told her I felt like I'd been overshadowed at my own wedding, she said I was overreacting and didn't get how important family traditions were to her. The whole tuxedo thing put a damper on our honeymoon. We kept arguing about boundaries and how much her family was involved in our lives. Eventually, Rachel explained that her brother Marcus had always wanted a big, formal wedding, but when he married Olivia, they eloped because they couldn't afford one. Olivia had gotten pregnant soon after they started dating, so they rushed to get married before the baby came. Marcus always regretted not having wedding photos or a proper celebration. So Rachel thought it would be nice to include him in our wedding and give him the experience he missed. She didn't see why this upset me, She thought it didn't take anything away from our marriage. After the wedding, Ethan, Rachel's brother, reached out to apologize for how things went down. He said he loved his siblings but admitted they sometimes crossed lines with how close they were. Olivia also texted me, suggesting we meet for coffee to talk about what it's like marrying into the family. Their kindness meant a lot, and I decided to try to make things work with Rachel. Over the next few years, things got better. Rachel worked on setting boundaries with her brothers. We made rules like no family calls after 8 p.m. and taking weekend trips without checking in with them. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction. Still, I couldn't completely let go of what Marcus had done at our wedding. At family gatherings, I noticed how he often talked over Olivia, brushed off her ideas, and seemed to care more about his sister's opinions than his wife's. Olivia seemed to have accepted her place in the family dynamic, but I could tell she wasn't entirely comfortable. She'd often zone out during family dinners, scrolling on her phone or finding excuses to help out in the kitchen. 3 months ago, I took a half-day off work to meet up with some old college roommates who were in town. We met at a coffee shop about 30 miles from where Marcus and Olivia lived. While we were catching up over coffee, I noticed Marcus walk in with a woman who wasn't Olivia. I quickly looked away, not wanting to get pulled into a family conversation during my limited time with friends. Marcus didn't see me. He and the woman sat in a corner booth, talking closely. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language was hard to miss. She kept touching his arm. He leaned in when she spoke, and they even shared food off the same plate. I tried to convince myself it was innocent. Maybe she was a coworker, a friend, or a cousin I hadn't met. But then, as they got up to leave, I saw Marcus put his hand on her backside. Through the window, I watched them kiss by their cars before driving off separately. My friends noticed I was distracted and asked if something was wrong. I brushed it off, saying I just remembered an unfinished work project. After they left, I sat in my car, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Marcus, the guy who seemed like the perfect family man, was clearly having an affair. I decided to follow the woman's car. She drove to an apartment complex about 15 minutes away. I wrote down the address and her license plate number. Over the next week, I did some digging. Her name was Danielle, not her real name. A 38-year-old physical therapist who had worked with Marcus when he hurt his shoulder coaching last year. From social media and coffee shop receipts, I figured out they'd been meeting up regularly for at least 6 months. My first thought was to tell Rachel, but I hesitated. Her family's loyalty was so tangled that I had no idea how she'd react. Would she even believe me? So I came up with a plan. I found out Marcus and Danielle met at the same coffee shop every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, days when Olivia took their daughters to gymnastics and dance. I started tipping a barista named Kyle really well, and eventually, I told him I needed his help to expose a cheater. He agreed, probably more for the money than anything else. Kyle helped me set up a customer appreciation day at the coffee shop, with games and prizes, scheduled for a Thursday afternoon when I knew Marcus and Danielle would be there. Then, I invited the whole family to meet me at the coffee shop for what I called a surprise announcement. Rachel was suspicious but curious. Olivia agreed right away, mentioning her daughter's classes were canceled that day anyway. Rachel's parents and Ethan, along with his fiancée Lucia, all said they'd come. Marcus was the only one who said no, claiming he had work. I acted disappointed but said I understood. On Thursday, I rounded up everyone except Marcus and took them to the coffee shop. Rachel seemed really on edge as we got closer, constantly checking her phone. I asked if something was up, and she said no, but she was gripping her phone so hard her knuckles turned white. When we got there, the coffee shop was hosting a couple challenge game. Kyle had set it up so Danielle and Marcus were picked as contestants. They were answering questions about each other when my family walked in. The last question was about how long they'd known each other, and Danielle said, "Since last April, when Marcus came in for physical therapy for his shoulder." Kyle then gave them the grand prize, a gift basket and a framed photo he'd taken of them together on an earlier visit, with a caption calling them the coffee shop's most regular Tuesday to Thursday couple. Olivia froze in the doorway. Rachel's parents looked back and forth between Marcus and Olivia, confused. Ethan muttered something under his breath, and Lucia held his hand tightly. Marcus saw us all standing there and went pale. Danielle, still clueless, happily took the gift basket. Then she noticed the group by the door and how Marcus was staring at us in shock. Olivia turned and walked out without a word. Marcus ran after her, leaving Danielle holding the basket. Rachel's parents followed them outside, but Rachel stayed inside, staring at Danielle with an unreadable expression. I went outside to check on Olivia. Marcus was trying to talk to her by her car, but she kept shaking her head and stepping back. Rachel's dad stood between them, holding Marcus back, while her mom comforted Olivia. When I went back inside, Rachel and Ethan were arguing quietly but stopped when they saw me. Danielle had already left. The ride home was completely silent. When we got there, Rachel blew up at me, accusing me of intentionally embarrassing her family. I asked why she cared more about Marcus being humiliated than Olivia being betrayed. When I asked if she knew about the affair, she wouldn't look at me. Her silence said it all. I packed a bag and left for a hotel. Rachel kept calling, but I didn't answer. Ethan texted, asking if I wanted to grab a drink. I met Ethan at a bar close to my hotel, and he confirmed what I'd suspected. Rachel had known about Marcus's affair for months. Marcus had told her that his marriage to Olivia was basically over and they were only staying together for the kids. He even claimed Olivia was okay with the arrangement. Ethan hadn't bought that story, but Rachel had chosen to believe Marcus. Ethan apologized for not telling me sooner. He tried to get Marcus to end the affair and had urged Rachel to stop covering for him. But the older siblings always stuck together, leaving Ethan outnumbered. After 3 days, I went back home. Rachel tried to explain herself, saying she was just trying to protect her brother while he figured things out. I asked her how she'd feel if I decided to figure things out with someone else. She didn't have an answer. Over the next few weeks, the family split into new sides. Olivia filed for separation and took the kids to stay with her parents. Marcus moved in with Rachel's parents, who surprisingly took his side, saying marriages go through tough times and Olivia was overreacting. Ethan and Lucia fully supported Olivia, often watching the kids so she could meet with her lawyer or just have some time to herself. Rachel and I barely spoke, and we started sleeping in separate rooms. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was how she'd helped cover up her brother's betrayal. Update 1. 2 weeks after the coffee shop drama, Rachel reached out to talk. I expected more excuses or blame, but instead, she asked if Marcus could stay with us for a while. Her parents were getting fed up with him, especially since he wasn't trying to fix things with Olivia, and he couldn't stay with Danielle anymore. She'd ended things after everything blew up, so he needed a place to crash. I couldn't help but laugh. It was such a ridiculous request that it just slipped out. Rachel looked hurt, which only made me laugh harder. When I finally got myself together, I asked her if she was seriously suggesting that her cheating brother, the guy who wrecked his family and played a part in messing up our marriage, should live with us. Rachel didn't get why it was a big deal. She said Marcus was family, and family sticks together no matter what. I reminded her that Marcus hadn't stuck by Olivia, and she hadn't stuck by me when she kept his secret. Things got heated. Rachel then claimed Marcus had told her Olivia was emotionally abusive and distant, which supposedly pushed him into Danielle's arms. According to him, Danielle was just someone who listened and understood him in a way Olivia never did. I told Rachel I'd only think about letting Marcus stay if he admitted these abuse claims to Olivia's face, in front of the whole family. If Olivia really was abusive, then everyone should know so they could support Marcus properly. Rachel agreed right away and called Marcus to set up the meeting. Olivia agreed to come, bringing her parents for backup. We all met the next evening at Ethan and Lucia's place. Olivia sat calmly, while Marcus slumped in a chair across from her. Rachel's parents stood behind him, and Ethan and Lucia stayed quiet, just serving drinks. Rachel kept giving me nervous looks. I started the conversation by explaining that Marcus had accused Olivia of emotional abuse, which he said justified his affair with Danielle. Then I asked Marcus to explain his side directly to Olivia. He fidgeted and mumbled something about feeling unsupported and misunderstood. Olivia just listened quietly, not interrupting. When I pushed him for specific examples of abuse, Marcus got defensive and couldn't give clear answers. Finally, he admitted Olivia wasn't abusive, he just felt neglected because she was so focused on their kids. Rachel looked completely shocked. Her brother had lied to her, and she had trusted him without even questioning it. Olivia finally spoke up, calmly listing all the ways she had supported Marcus throughout their marriage. She took on most of the childcare, managed their home, worked part-time to help with finances while he focused on his coaching career, and put her own dreams on hold. She explained how Marcus would vanish for hours without explanation, make her doubt herself when she questioned his schedule, and always put his siblings' needs before his own family's. By the end of the meeting, Rachel's parents apologized to Olivia. Ethan looked like he'd been proven right all along. Marcus left by himself, turning down Rachel's offer to stay with us that night. Rachel broke down and cried for hours. She had always seen herself as part of this perfect, tight-knit family, but now she had to face the truth. Her brother wasn't the person she thought he was, and their family wasn't as ideal as she'd always believed. Update 2. A month went by, and things started to shift. Marcus moved into an apartment on the other side of town and began therapy, saying he wanted to work on himself before trying to fix things with Olivia. Meanwhile, Rachel and I started marriage counseling to rebuild trust and set better boundaries with her family. Olivia filed for divorce, asking for primary custody of their daughters but making sure Marcus still had plenty of time with them. The whole process was surprisingly calm, with both Olivia and Marcus focusing on what was best for the kids. Olivia even stood up for Marcus when her parents badmouthed him in front of the girls. Rachel's parents were having a hard time adjusting to their new reality. They'd always treated their son like he could do no wrong, but seeing him mess up so badly made them take a hard look at how they'd enabled his behavior. They started going to family therapy with Ethan and Rachel, but Marcus wasn't included in those sessions. Ethan and Lucia kept planning their wedding, though the family drama had taken some of the joy out of it. They decided to scale things back, opting for a small destination wedding with just a few close friends instead of the big family event they'd originally wanted. The biggest change was in Rachel. She started going to therapy on her own, in addition to our marriage counseling. Through that, she began to see how her family's way of doing things had messed up her sense of boundaries and relationships. She admitted that she'd always put her brother's needs before mine because that's what she'd been taught to do. One night, she showed me her phone. It was full of missed calls from Marcus. For the first time, she was setting limits with him. Instead of rushing to help him every time he had a crisis, she told him to talk to his therapist. When he showed up at our house without warning, she made it clear he needed to call first. None of this was easy. Rachel felt guilty at times and sometimes slipped back into old habits. Marcus, on the other hand, went back and forth between respecting her boundaries and pushing them, accusing her of abandoning him when he needed her most. During all of this, I kept my distance from Marcus. We saw each other at family events, but we didn't talk much beyond saying hello. He never apologized for the tuxedo incident at the wedding or for putting Rachel in the position of keeping his affair a secret. To my surprise, Olivia reached out to me. We met for coffee at a different place than where everything had blown up. She thanked me for exposing the affair, saying that even though it hurt, it made her face problems she'd been avoiding for years. She'd taken on a full-time job at the place where she used to work part-time and was thinking about finishing the master's degree she'd put on hold when she had her first daughter. When we finished our coffee, Olivia checked the time and said she had to pick up the girls from dance class. As we walked to the parking lot, she stopped by her car and held out her hand. "No hard feelings," she said. "What you did took courage." We shook hands, and I watched her drive off, surprised by how things had turned out so differently than I'd imagined. So that's where I'm at. Reddit. Thanks for reading. Writing all this down has been really helpful for me. Rachel and I are still working on our relationship, but we're both determined to create something healthier than what we had before. Sometimes it takes a family falling apart for everyone to realize what needs to change.